to me 10 times, something like that. And it's fun. Anyway, I can go ahead and introduce myself. I know the clock is running, and they have cake afterwards. So if you just came for the cake, we'll have it after I get done. My name is Randy Patrick. I am a taxonomist, like Thomas Say is a taxonomist. I knew about Thomas Say in 1968 in a class I was taking on the taxonomy of marine invertebrates, fossil and living. The first thing the professor said was, "You're never going to be him." He named 2,000 plus species. And then he didn't say anything else about it. And so over the years, he's kind of been one of my personal heroes. And, I've got several personal heroes, but think about it. He got to name the world. Like when you read his stuff, and here's his books. Ryan is the director at the WMI, if you don't know him. And here are two of Thomas Say's books. He will be the one, when things are over, if you want to look through a few of the pages. We don't want to damage the books or break the backs or anything. He didn't have references in his books. Why?
He didn't have Google.
He didn't have Google, but he also, no one else had ever done it. He was the reference. And so like I named a new type of spider and I had something like 75 references. And that was the hardest part you had to make sure no one else had named it anywhere on Earth, okay? Thomas Say didn't have that problem. To do that today, we've got to go to another planet that has life on it, okay? So the first, and the name always stays. And before I get into it, I want to show you two things. I'll probably drop these, but that's okay, they're mine. This is, you can buy this book at Barnes & Noble. You can buy it for $8 on Amazon. It's Seashells in North America. 47 of these were named by Thomas Say. And the names are still good and his name is on it. Your name never loses. Like I've named things, no matter what happens if they don't like my name, the name stays, my name stays as the person who found it and described it, okay? I want you to think about this. This is a family book to go collect seashells, period. 47 of them are still in there today. And this is freshwater mussels of the Midwest, of which several are extinct. 17 of these species that are in here today, Thomas Say named. And he named them before he died in 1834. And so he didn't do the Midwest until he was here, okay? And so you have these really interesting things about Thomas that he's too hard to talk about everything because he's a 2-semester course. One, he published at a level that people don't understand. He didn't have Google, but he also didn't have a cell phone. He didn't have a TV. He didn't care about neighbors. He didn't have arguments. He basically stayed at home and worked, and his wife Lucy made sure everything was okay, and he got left alone as much as he could. Anyway, so let's go ahead here. And I'll try to stay where you can see my face. Let me get this. And so here's Thomas as a young man. And this is the favorite portrait of him. And by the way, here's a really interesting thing about portraiture from the time frame of when they made portraits. If you were doing expeditions, they did portraits of you. The reason was most people that did an exploratory expedition did not come back. And they wanted to know what you looked like. Think about today. If I said, "Oh, I need your son to go with me on an expedition," now it's about 1 in 5 he'll come back. He didn't hesitate. Oh, by the way, here's the original Firefly t-shirt from 2018 when we put it in here. I found it in the bottom of a drawer. Now, let's talk about me real quick. I do stuff at the WMI, and the WMI, if you don't know what it is, you need to go there. Lots of the stuff I talk about, they have within their collections. The Indiana State Museum, I'm a volunteer paleontologist identifying things no one else can in their collection. I'm a specialist in 330 million year old sharks, and my wife is doing Ice Age micromammals. She's a family practice doctor specializing in tropical diseases, but she's retired. She said, "How hard can it be? There's only 535 species. And they all have 100 and some bones." So that's what she's doing. We do that for fun a couple days a week. And then I'm also on the board of directors for Indiana Audubon. And so I'm trying to save birds, save animals, do get rid of invasive species, and identify everything before I die. So I am a little bit busy. Anyway, so let's go ahead now. And I want you to think about this. So what's a taxonomist? And this is the thing, sometimes it's hard to get people to think about this, because when you look at, whoops, wrong button, sorry, I'll go back. When you look at, there's my little laser, they're a specialist in taxonomy, which sounds crazy, but that's how you're identifying, describing, classifying, and naming and placing things in the right place. Right now, if you count everything that's alive, bacteria, viruses, plants, animals, etc., we're about 30 million species. And we know that we probably have that many to identify yet. Okay? That's what people like me do. Okay? We find new things, we identify it, you hope it doesn't kill you, all right? But I'm saying, if knowing how things fit in the evolution of life and the scheme of the rest of the life is really important on things. Now here's let's see, I'm trying to think what it is. Okay, you know the new obesity drug? Okay, they got that from the saliva, from the spit of a Gila monster, because they only eat 4 times a year, and the scientist working with them was a taxonomist who knew that. And he wanted to figure out how that animal could live only eating actually 3 or 4 times a year. And they developed a set of proteins that ended up being what they call them, the OGL ones. I don't know what the name is. From that. So why do you care about all this weird stuff? Think about that. You know, we have animals that survive things that nothing should survive. And you really, really care. Oh, no, go ahead.
Tardigrades.
I didn't hear you.
Tardigrades, the ones that, they can like...
Oh, they live, oh my God, they can live in a vacuum.
They can like, so, they can live on like...
Yeah, they're really cool. I know a couple of people that study those because you can't seem to kill them easy. We sent them to the moon and the spacecraft from India crashed. Now, did they get out? There's no atmosphere there, but they don't die in a vacuum right away. Okay, now, so let's go ahead. Now, so here, a classification you're seeing is started by Carl Linnaeus, another one of my personal heroes. He tried to classify everything in the world, and Thomas Say was given a copy of his book on this, and it's called Systems of Nature. Linnaeus tried to name everything on Earth and put it in some kind of field, and that's what this is. This is the firefly, the Thomas Say firefly. And everybody thinks the names are hard to pronounce. You pronounce it by just, you can kind of make it up if you want. So, pyractomena, right? Angulata. And learn that, because your friends will be impressed, okay? So say, oh my God, we were looking at this firefly and it was, and give that name. And when you look at it, it's what, but it gives us a placement. Now I am going to talk about fireflies in my talk. I'm going to talk about Thomas more after, and I'll talk 4 or 5 minutes about fireflies. There's a piece of firefly art I have. I didn't bring it because it went from, I bought it for less than $100, and it's valued at many times that now. The artist was new. So anyway, artists love fireflies, and I'm really serious. Artists love fireflies. You can find that, well, I noticed there was a firefly over at one of the stores here that was a 3-dimensional model made out of probably just paper and glue and wax and stuff, but it's still a piece of art. Thomas Say's firefly is a state insect. They did it in 2018. School kids put it together. But what I like, and I'm really serious about this, look at the right column. Families love fireflies. The weather turns warm. You can take your kids and go outside. You can collect them in jars. They light up, and everybody thinks they're cool. They're like the perfect family activity, right? And families do that. I was raised that way. But we collected everything. My dad thought you should collect every single thing. Then come on in. This is not a problem. I have 7 grandkids, and I guarantee you I'm taking care of all of them because we go out and poke things with sticks. That's what you should do. Have I ever gotten in trouble for my daughters? Did you hear what I just said? Yes. Okay. Now, here's the, here it is. And isn't this beautiful? Look how big that is. It's actually less than 2 centimeters. And what's cool about there is Thomas Say's firefly, the state insect of Indiana, and I think it's like the best thing ever. I think the state fossil should be mammoth. They call it a crinoid, which I've worked with. I like mammoths better. I've dug 9 mammoths, okay? But nobody listened to me when I was at the State House. And what I like about this is, this part's really important, but are fireflies poisonous? Yeah, a bird or a little frog or something that eats the living firefly dies. Oh, Now you won't, and kids won't. And on the right, this is the life cycle. And like I said, I want to talk about them a little bit. They have a larval phase that glows. And we've got a book up here. I've got the books on fireflies. Fireflies, glowworms, and lightning bugs. That's the best book for adults to name all. They're all in there, okay? And they don't talk about too much about what these, let me get this here, let's see, what these little guys do. If you squash one in your hands, you break out. They're poisonous. They inject a fluid into what they want to eat, and it dissolves the inside out of the animal, and they drink it. And these, I don't think they were going to have some walks and stuff, but I think the weather's going to get rid of that. All you have to do is go out when it's been a little bit wet. Don't take a flashlight. It takes about 15 minutes for your eyes to get dark enough, okay? Go out in the dark and look down at the ground, and you'll see little glow bugs. This time for the last, well, it takes them 2 years or so to get through this side. So they lay the eggs, you get little worms. You have as many as 10 to 20 bugs, depending on the species. And they all glow. And here's an interesting thing. I'm a science guy, and I'm really serious. I can't help myself. I'm still doing science. I get talks on science all the time. How are those different from the deep sea creatures that glow? And the answer is not very much. But I know a person, that's what they're working on. And so they're trying to collect deep sea creatures that glow, and it looks like it's kind of the same process. And it's way more efficient than light bulbs or even LEDs. But anyway, so then they go into a stage where they're in a chrysalis, and then after a few weeks they hatch and crawl out and fly. They're a beetle, so they've got a hard wing cover and single wings, and just watch them fly. You can actually see that. There's all kinds of fireflies around now. And this is the most common one in this part of India, okay? And so you get these really cool bugs that you shouldn't play with if they're in the ground. You get I get a nasty red rash. Okay. I tend to learn by catastrophic situations. How do you learn? I was fucking with my hands. And I was not a kid. I was like 38 years old, okay? I all broke out. My wife's a doctor, by the way. She used to carry a stitch kit for me and things that made my skin act normal. But anyway, so let's go ahead. And all of the fireflies, now here's what I ask people to do. Each species has a different color and flash rate. And so if you see them, watch. The say firefly is a light orange. I'm not going to tell you the rates. I actually don't know it. I've tried to count it, and I'm never completely right. But that being said, they're all different. This is the male and the female finding each other so they can make those little eggs, make those little nasty larvae, and make the little fireflies again that everybody loves. Okay? And so they're all, and look at that. These are all, every species is different. And they don't have the time to save one in here. I couldn't find it, or it was with others, because I wanted you to see how different they are. And sometimes here, you can get 2 or 3 species, and you'll see the difference. And you have funny conversations with people, because they'll say, well, that one's kind of green. Yes. That one's orange. Yes. That one's white. Yes. And the answer is they're all different species. And that's what a taxonomist does. You look up taxon, all different kinds of things, and you say how they're different or how they're alike. And that's what's really important. It's really fun. Now, when observing fireflies, see if you can count the flashes. Okay? For some reason, I can't. You know, it's just like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then they, Pick a time frame, 10 seconds, have one person set a timer, have 3 other people count, take an average, okay? And you can see these. So fireflies mates by the flashes of the same species. And we think they're just dumb bugs, right? But they know how to tell the difference between the person they want to have, the bug they want to have babies with, and the ones that will just try to kill and eat them. Okay? And so that's really important. And so they have these flashes. Now here's, again, I put this up here. Here's the cycle. This is the second one. And I put it up there because this is what you need to understand to find them. They're all here in the millions, okay? We can kill them off. Some of them are endangered. Some of them, the numbers are going down. But if you know what to do, they're there. And they're not there in 2 or 3. If you're going to see the little glowworms in the mud, they're there by the thousands. If you've got a really good camera that you can set on 2 or 3 minute exposure, you'll get good pictures. This isn't rocket science, and I've been a rocket scientist, okay, so I know that. I've got a good friend, he doesn't say rockets. He says, this isn't brain surgery. Guess what he does? He's a brain surgeon, okay? He also collects weird things with me. Now, before we get to Thomas, I'm going to go to Thomas next. A phylogeny is what they evolved from. So we have fireflies at 99 million years ago, and they're still here. And when we look at genetically, when we look at the DNA, that's what they evolved. This is a series that they evolved through to get the modern firefly. And we show that by what we call proximate DNA, and that's taxonomy as well. And then on the right is the Linnaean method, and all of you hated this in school because it was, everybody thought it was hard. I thought it was great fun. Okay, so I could memorize things. I could use words other people didn't know. Okay, so anyway, let's go on to Thomas. And here's an interesting thing about Thomas. When you look at him in his later life, he lived on 6 cents a day food. He tried to not spend money. He only wanted to identify things. He literally worked at it all the time. He was raised wealthy. Okay, they were Quakers. His dad was a merchant, doctor, apothecary specialist. And that's his house in the middle, which is now gone. They tore it down. We couldn't get it on the next. Oh, by the way, it's really weird what you can say. We saved eagles, but Arctic curlews, we still had them living in 1987. I was one of the people looking at them up in the high Arctic. Last one died off in 87. They're extinct. We tried to save them, not at all. It's very expensive to save species. So anyway, this is really interesting. So he was born in Philadelphia, let's see, 27 June, I gotta look, 87. And remember, we didn't have a lot of medicine then. In my family, we've had a lot of doctors. And all of a sudden in my family, everybody survives when they figure out they can sterilize things. It's funny they didn't know that before. But look at this, his dad, the physician, his mother was a relative of many famous botanists. Now, and everybody goes, and if they say it right and everything, Thomas Say was self-taught. And the answer is yes, but. And the but is all capital letters. He grew up around people who wanted to know the natural world. His dad ran an apothecary. In other words, he collected insects, plants, parts of animals, ground them up, and gave them to you as medicines. Thomas Say was trained in that. So it wasn't that he didn't know the natural world, he knew the natural world differently. And I don't know how to say it other than that. So was he self-trained? Yes. Okay. He learned everything he could about insects and shells and coyotes and other things. That being said, he started out from a base of knowledge that people sometimes just don't talk about. I'm going to have to get a drink here. Anyway, and this is his namesake, his grandfather. Give me a second. Oops, well, I thought I had him open. He thought you should know the natural world. His name's Thomas Say. I guess you'd call him, well, the senior, because it made your life better. And Thomas Say always wanted to be like him. When you read writings of Thomas Say, today everything that you read is about the shells he identified, the insects he identified, but I have a book of his letters, and he talks about his namesake that he's named after, grandfather, as being a naturalist by habit. Have you ever just wanted to know trees? That was him. Anyway, but his mother, who died when he was 6, and when you look at, she was the niece of the naturalist William Bartram, who was an artist and botanist. She was the granddaughter of the greatest botanist in North America, who was known as the father of American botany. And Thomas Say grew up in that area with those people, and he very regularly went to the botanical garden owned by those folks, okay? And so we got this fellow who grew up knowing the natural world, which I think is really, really cool. And now this is one that most people, they've heard of it, but they don't understand how much, sorry, hope that wasn't too loud. You know, people screaming in the back, well, that was 200 decibels. Anyway, Thomas Say was one of the founding members. He was quite young, okay? He was in his 20s. And they decided to build a place to collect everything and store it. Not a catalog like people who really were rich would have, a catalog of curiosities. I have one. I have a catalog. I've worked in 28 countries and visited 62. And my wife and I collect stuff. And we're building one of our house rooms is going to be a catalog of curiosities room. Okay? That's not what they wanted. They wanted collections of everything. And it's really interesting who was there. You had Thomas, as the singer, you can see the name, Thomas Say. Jared Troost was the collector of minerals and rocks. His collection today is being assessed into the Indiana State Museum's collection, and Peggy Fisher-Keller, who comes down here to work on things, is the one doing that. It's almost an overwhelming job. Again, he collected everything that was a rock that was different. And her job is to name it to the modern standard, which is what I do down here. And she's been working on that, I think, for 3 years now. And I don't think she's a tenth of the way through that collection. And then she comes down here once or twice a year to work on the things that are here. And so anyway, they also had a Frenchman who donated his botany collection, but they were flowers and plants from around Paris, which I find interesting. And you had lots of other members. And now it's really funny. I found out doing this research that a relative of mine was part of this. And I want to make sure I get the name right. And I literally I knew this. My paternal grandmother's name was Melsheimer. And that's kind of an unusual name. Frederick Valentine Melsheimer also worked in insects. He wrote the first book on insects. He was called, in Pennsylvania, the father of entomology, not for the whole country, but just there. And he traded and donated specimens and writing with Thomas Say. And I'm apparently a descendant of his. So, I don't know. But we have our family down here by 1820. So I don't know how we fit. But it's kind of weird. I didn't know that till I was doing all this stuff for this talk. So you do find out things. Anyway, so you had all these members, and some of them were just money. It sounds really crazy. You have to have donors. And some of the people on that list, they just wanted to know the natural world. They didn't want to collect it. They didn't want to go places. They didn't want to have the catalogs, but they would give you money. And that still works, by the way, today. And so they were given enough money to buy a building and put the collections in. Thomas was not the president. Think about what he wanted. He loved knowledge. He was the librarian and the person who they let name everything. Can there be a better job for a taxonomist? And he wasn't married yet, and he was somewhat shy, but not. It's really weird to tell. He liked to dress up good though, and he kept his hair cut for the style of the times, and he had the sideburns with the curly hair, and he had all that. My wife thinks he was truly handsome. I won't tell you what she says about me. Okay, but I'm saying, so here he was. So Thomas Say, the scientist, published the first paper on shells of North America. So really he's the conchologist of North America. But he's done so much on insects that he is now known, and the insect society is called the Thomas Say Entomology Society. That should tell you something. Think about if you did it good enough, they named a society after you. I want to do that, but I'm 78 years old. I don't think I'm going to make it now, okay? I've got to pick up the pace and name another 20,000 species. But anyway, so he described many species. He went on, he did things, I'll talk about the expeditions, but the thing on turtles is my favorite. It's hard to read all of his articles. He wrote hundreds, okay, in the Journal for the Academy of Natural Sciences, Philadelphia. But he took all the turtles in the collection that had been collected and named by other people, and he re-described them in a more correct manner. And they were happy with that. He was better at describing things than anybody alive. And when you read his stuff, you go, well, that's really short. No, it's exactly what you needed to identify the specimen. You see what I'm saying? And so anyway, let's get back to, this is McClure. Now, if you're from here, you know about William. Okay, now here's what's interesting about William. He's a geologist. He wanted to do the geology of North America. He's called the father of North American geology. But he was also rich, okay? So he made his money in Scotland, and I think part of England, selling textiles. And he made enough that he was considered one of the richest people on earth, and he came here, okay? And he brought stuff with him. People go, like, what do you bring? I'd like to know the ship he came on. He brought 1,500 science volumes and donated them to the Academy. He thought Thomas Say was amazing. He basically, Thomas Say's dad had died a few months before that, and he kind of just stepped into that place. And he paid to take care of Thomas Say, so Thomas Say could just do research until he died of typhoid in 34. Okay? I want you to think about that. So they were friends, but he just said, you can't just go crazy things like most people do. You've got to just go name stuff. And I will make it so you can. Okay? I like people like that, okay? You know, pay me to travel around the world and collect stuff. I'll show it to you when I get back. And anyway, so McClure is known as the father of geology, which is really cool. And the geology for the United States basically started here, if you look at it. And I like this. Okay, the guy on the right is Charles Lesueur. He was an artist, fish collector, and taxonomist from France. And that's Thomas as a young man. Look at his hair. That was considered style. Okay, you wanted the front hair kind of curly, you wanted the big sideburns that were curly, and he had that. But it seemed like he was shy. They say that. I mean, can you be shy if you like to be totally stylish as to what's going on? Okay, I worked in a radiation lab. My hair's been white since I was 26. We didn't know if we had it set up right. We had death circles on the floor. Okay, so I may have been too close a couple times. So I've never been stylish. I'm just happy that there's still hair on top. And here, Lesueur painted this picture of Thomas when he first met him. And look at the difference between the two. He's just a guy in Philadelphia who looks very, very normal. Now, Lesueur painted over 1,000 paintings in his time in the United States. He painted 100 on the Boatload of Knowledge. And you can kind of find them. They're a little hard to put together. But I'm just saying that, think these guys, they all like Thomas. When he was a very personable individual. They're both naturalists. The biggest thing was Thomas Say didn't do art. And that's important to think about with what's coming up. He didn't do art so much. He could draw things, okay, but not like you needed to draw to publish it. And I've published things, and you have to pay an artist to do the work if you can't do it. All right, because it has to be good enough that other people can figure out what's in the art. Everything I drew looks like Richard Nixon. So anyway, so here we go. Now, what's another thing he's known for that's not here, before he came here? 3 big expeditions. The Long 1, the Long 2, and the Georgia, which was kind of a disaster because the Native Americans were kind of killing people and running around, and so they kind of had to end it early. But Thomas Say was the head naturalist, the only naturalist on the first one, the Long 1, and one of the group of naturalists on Long 2, and he got to collect everything And then they sent it back to the academy because we didn't have a national museum. And then he got to name everything. I want you to think about that. He got to go with like the long one had 22 people. And some of them were just soldiers. I mean, they were just trying to stay alive. But everything they all collected went to where Thomas Say got to name it. And none of the things they were collecting had been formally named. And when you're a taxonomist, I've worked in Central Africa. You go stupid places and do stupid things trying to collect stuff that nobody else has ever seen and hoping you don't die. They've never made a portrait of me, okay? But I have collected in swamps where we hadn't had human beings in 50 or 60 years. And it's a different kind of world. So the second one was to do the Canadian border in Minnesota and the Great Lakes. They started out in carriages with horses, and the weather was so bad they had to go to horses, and they collected, it's like some crazy number, like 10,000 specimens. All of them got sent back to the academy, and Thomas got to name all of those. And so why has he been able to name all these? Sometimes they were repeats, okay? And then the Georgia expedition was kind of a failure. Le was happy he collected fish. But Thomas didn't collect stuff because they kind of stopped him, and he didn't want to talk to locals because locals had been told there were famous scientists coming. And here's what Thomas said in one of his letters. I hate locals. All they want to do is talk. All I want to do is collect, okay? And so they didn't tell the locals who they were, but there was kind of an uprising in the Native Americans in Florida, and they had to kind of call things off. But look whose name is like the second name, Major Long and Mr. Thomas Say. And what I like is that's his military uniform. He's still handsome, my wife points out to me when she sees these. But look at that, that's his, so he went as a military person. And by the way, now here, this is something else I do. I do give regular talks on, do we want to bring things back that are extinct? And I know people are working with the passenger pigeon. I actually used some information from the WMI on the last talks I gave on passenger pigeons that were here in 1813. And this pigeon, the band-tailed pigeon, is the closest relative to the passenger pigeon. It looks very similar. The DNA is 98% the same. So we only need to figure out 2 or 3 of these. And here's the thing that's really weird. We have transgenic mice that we use for all kinds of things. They have transgenic chickens. The only thing we have to figure out is what's the DNA difference. And we're not making a passenger pigeon. And people have to understand this. We're not making a dire wolf. We're not making a mammoth. We're making something that looks like a mammoth. We're making something that looks like a dire wolf. We don't have that many genes to do to make the passenger pigeon, but we have to bring about 100,000 of them back for the breeding to work. And they destroyed huge sections of forest, and they pooped everywhere. The trees died. For the Native Americans ate their babies, and all that was cute. But we have transgenic chickens. So we're going to take the DNA from that and put it in a regular chicken egg and grow passenger pigeons. And that's not science fiction. We've already done it with some groups of animals now, and they're working on it. So it'll be very interesting if we bring those back. But anyway, Thomas Say named the one that was that was the closest relative. And I love this because Thomas Say is in the lower left. And this is a conference. They also were doing treaties and other things with Native Americans. Oh, how am I doing time-wise? I have no idea where I am.
You're okay.
I'm okay? Okay. And there's an enlargement of that. Thomas Say is the one on the left. Notice the curly hair and the long sideburns that are curly in the end. He was very stylish when he was in. And he was in the military and was in the War of 1812. And I couldn't figure out where, if he fought and where. It said he did, but I couldn't figure out where. But he also was in the military and did this. But they knew after 1812 that he was this naturalist that wanted to know everything. And so he went along. They didn't give him the sash like the colonel has. And so I love it. He was always up to date in how you look. Now, the second expedition was mainly to study Native Americans in geology and collect anything new. And Thomas Say had 3 other naturalists on the trip with him. He was in charge, okay? So he was a head naturalist. they collected thousands and thousands of specimens, which he took back to the academy, and it looks like he named all of them. Now, there was a couple of them he didn't name, but the people that named them after Thomas, which I think is really interesting, and we'll talk about that later. Now, the boatload of knowledge, a lot of you folks here know a lot about the boatload of knowledge. To me, it was a very interesting thing in that it was a keelboat. Basically, you put it out in the river, and you kept it from crashing into the sides. I mean, it froze into ice, it run aground, the women on board sometimes were running the paddles. I mean, it was all this, but it was basically a crew, a very small crew, and educators, people wanting to be educators who helped. That was Lucy and her two younger sisters, and scientists from the academy. And the academy was really mad at McClure. When you read their letters, McClure took the best people from the academy and put them on the boat. And Thomas Say was the best of the best of the best. And when you read letters on what they wrote about Thomas Say in New Harmony, they're not flattering. Okay, and if you've read those, you know when they in the 1820s when they weren't flattering, they weren't flattering. They said he was not productive. New Harmony took away his ability to see things. New Harmony made him not as good a scientist, and that's not the words they used. Okay, but he got married. You know, he met other people. He got to name things. But anyway, so this was a very successful boatload of knowledge that came to New Harmony. Robert Owen, who started on the boat, I guess just got tired of how slow it was going, got off and came and finished up purchasing New Harmony. And you should, if you're here, you should know that. Lesueur did 100 paintings or drawings while he was on the boat. And those are still available at different universities. Although mainly Purdue, which I'm not sure why that's true. And by the way, Lucy and I think about this. I wonder if, and I haven't read this, Lucy was 25, and she had her two younger sisters on the boat, but her mother wasn't on the boat. None of them were married. Were they just considered spinsters by 25? Because they did that in Europe. If you were 18 in Europe and you were unmarried as a woman, you were considered a spinster. And you should read some of the stuff that Linnaeus put down. Anyway, so this was an advertisement they put out, and there's Robert Owen, there's William McClure, there's Thomas, and I have to look up the pronunciation. There's Lesueur, and then I always get it wrong, so I actually wrote it down. It's some people call her Fredigo, or they call her Fratasia, and I don't know what's correct. You'll have to tell me on that, because I've been told both of those are used here in New Harmony. But anyway, that's just the advertisement. Now, they don't have Lucy on here. She didn't count much. She was an artist wanting to teach art, okay? Here's Robert Owen. That's what he wanted built here, and I'm sure you've all seen that. That never happened. The town he bought looked like this, and there's still a lot of these buildings here. I'm staying in the Thomas Say house, which, by the way, I think is wonderful. Thank you. That's like perfect. I was hoping he was talking to me last night, but I don't wake up when I sleep. And so, anyway, now, Love Actually. And I really like this. Apparently, Thomas Say and Lucy fell in love on the boatload of knowledge. And I don't know if you understand it, but when they got New Harmony, they eloped to Illinois to get married, and her sisters went along to sign agreements that was what happened, that they got married, okay? And some of the people in New Harmony didn't like that. But it was like the perfect marriage. She's an artist. Thomas Say finds new things. She draws them, and we'll go, because they've got all this stuff for you to see over at the WMI up on the second floor and other places. And then she hand watercolors the images after they print them. And people go, and I know artists. My parents were, by the way, both artists. And so she did 40,000 plus watercolors for Thomas here. I want you to think about that number. She colored 40,000 individual things. A lot of them were the same one, because, you know, it was for the different pamphlet productions. But she also drew them. And I would love to see notes where they talked. because the artists I know will argue with you about color till the bridge freezes, okay? So I know 8 colors. I'm not an artist, all right? The artists I know 4 million. But think about it. She's hand coloring all of the shells, all of the insects, everything that he named, that he wrote about in a book. And then he has to approve it. I just want to know what those conversations were like. So anyway, that was I call it love, actually. So he married the perfect person to print up all his stuff. That's interesting. Anyway, so when we go back, now let's go through some of the things. By the way, we have all kinds of portraits of Thomas. This is the only thing I can ever find of Lucy. And I don't know why. Now this is Fulgur pyloides, very marine shell, very common. Okay, and Lucy drew it and colored it. Whoops, let's go back one. This is in the WMI up on the second floor. This is part of the Lucy Say, and I want you to look at this shell. So she drew it, and then so Thomas collected it. Thomas wrote the descriptor up, and then they cleared that part, so that was just setting type. And then Lucy drew it, and when you see it, and then it was engraved, and then the illustrations were colored, hand colored, and then you sold it by groupings. And so it took a bunch of people, and they were here. So the press that was here is known as one of the first scientific presses out of the East Coast. And so the press was here. And so to me, this is fantastic. And this is over in the WMI, if you want to see it. I just think this is one of those fantastic things. And now, by the way, grasshoppers are okay, but this ant is awesome. Thomas named it when he was mad at the ant. Okay, I'm really serious. You have to read what he says in his letters about. Okay, so this is Solenopsis molesta. He found it when he opened a bag of his seeds he had collected to identify the plants, and the ants had eaten all the seeds. They had molested all of his seeds, okay? And the one on the right is a grasshopper he named, and the name means two-lined, straight away. And these are things that Lucy drew, Thomas named, and I still think somewhere there has to be one book with a note where Thomas said, I don't like this color, and Lucy said, you're not an artist and you don't know colors, so just shut up, okay? She was a dancer, she was not the quiet person that Thomas was. Okay, now we're about through this. He named the coyote, and that name is still good. He named the tiger swallowtail. He collected Say's Phoebe, but a nephew of Napoleon named it after Thomas because he didn't think it was right to name it after himself when he was working with it. A younger fellow. And now, he's buried. This is the thing I couldn't figure out. Is Thomas truly buried there?
Yes.
It is. He is. Okay, I didn't know. I never found a place that said, well, he's there.
4 other people.
Yeah, okay. So, and his grave is back by the mansion. And he died of typhoid, which today we would clear up with a set of pills, which I think is interesting. And now, we should protect fireflies. I'm all for protecting them. Fireflies are easy to protect. Turn your lights off for May and June at night, 8 o'clock at night to midnight. Don't use lawn pesticides. It kills the larvae. And don't rake your yard really well in at least one spot. I do that by definition because I hate yard work, and I'm moving my yard to all Midwest species. I'm in an HOA. They don't think that's the right way to go, but I don't care. Now, I always add one science that has nothing to do with this. I think this is just, I'll get out of the light so you can see this. This is a burrowing owl. I used to teach what made it through the boundary of the 66 million year asteroid event. Birds or dinosaurs? Why did birds make it through? I taught this, totally wrong, and you've got to be willing to say, oh, I'm an idiot, that was really wrong. That's a burrowing owl. It wasn't burrowing animals at all. If there were a group, they found every single bird fossil on Earth as close to the boundary as they could find. Seed eaters, little bitty birds about this big. Apparently, there was enough seeds to get through that 3-year death sequence, or year and a half. And so all the birds that we have today have evolved from a population of birds that were about this big. And my favorite ones, and I try to bring them back, that's a talk I haven't given you guys, the diatryma terror birds. I know how to build them. I have all the parts, and it's just now sticking the DNA together. But nobody will pay me to do it. They were 12 feet tall, they could run, and they ate dawn horses. Wouldn't that be a fun pet to have? I have a neighbor that doesn't like me. My bird Bob's going to visit you. Okay, now let's go back to Thomas. And so this is just kind of quick here. Thomas named more than 2,000 species. He worked his entire life to know all of life. I want you to think about that. He worked his entire life to name and know life, right up to the end until he died. That's what he was working on. He named 1,600 species of insects. He named, actually, I think more like 800 of the others, so way more than 2,000. He wrote numerous articles, and he cleared up other people's work, and they weren't mad about it because it was better when he got done. He was amazing. And I don't know, this is when I debated even putting this in. Who are my personal heroes in science? Linnaeus. He put the system together that I've used my whole life, okay, to name things, to make life make sense. Thomas Say has always been one of my personal heroes. Think about what he did. And he lived to 47 now in 1834. That was probably pretty old, but he would have been working till he died on that no matter what. And I also have always liked Alexander von Humboldt. He thought you could know everything. And he spent his whole life trying to know everything. And young researchers, if he had any money, he just gave them his money. And he said, go find stuff, go do cool stuff. He died poor, and he said, I worked myself to stupid. If you've ever read any of his journals, that's the way I feel. I've worked myself to where I know I really don't know anything, and that's what he says. Anyway, thank you very much, and any questions? We have the books up here for Ryan to show you. I have the books on the fireflies. I have a handout if you want any of the references. Please feel free to take those. And there's cake in the back. Okay? Does that make sense? You're very welcome. I hope you learned something, and this is just me. Go play with the worms. Yes?
I lived in Denver, Colorado for 45 years.
Okay.
I never saw a firefly, and I was raised in Illinois, so, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I read recently that they have discovered some in Colorado.
Yes.
I don't remember just where.
Well, it's really weird because I've got, my daughter lives in Colorado up in the mountains, and they're in places that are somewhat east that are always wet. And I want you to think about Colorado. So elevation gets too cold, it kills out the organisms through the winter. And so you have to be kind of out in the plains, but you have to be in the plains where it's a semi-arid plain, right? So basically there's not the right amount of water. So you have to be in places where you have springs and stuff that give you, and yeah, they found some. Now they're not like numbers we have here. I mean, it's hard to get people to understand. There are nights when 20 to 50% of the insects you're seeing are fireflies. And I love them. I've been bit by so many things. Like bugs love me. They see me, and my wife goes, we just got back from India. She got one bite in 17 days in the Himalayas, in the mountains. I got more than that on ticks. I think I got bit by 5 different species of ticks, okay? So everything likes me. So think about Colorado. You shouldn't have any. Life is tenacious at a level people don't understand. And so, okay, one thing I do study is initiation of life on Earth and exoplanets. By the way, we've got 2 exoplanets that have blue-green algae, okay? I don't believe there are aliens. It takes 40 different catastrophic steps to get to us. And you have to have them in the right order to get to us. Now, there might be aliens, but if so, they're not like us at all. Okay, but on the Earth, we know now biogeochemically, and that's kind of what I do. We had life at 4.2 billion years ago. The minute the Earth's crust was cool enough to have water, we had blue-green algae. And it's still in charge at 700 million years ago, so it's most of the life. Anyway, any other questions? Sorry. I hope I helped you on that, because I was like amazed when I read that. I had a grandson that sent me the article, "We have fireflies." And I was telling him, "You need to come here to see fireflies." And he said, "We have them here." Go ahead, anybody? Go ahead.
Out of curiosity, how did you have 40,000 pieces of paper to be printing?
Oh no, they had printing presses here. And so they might, let's say they printed 500 pages for the first pamphlet.
Do they make their paper here or?
You know, okay, now this is interesting because they bought, I have letters where Thomas is buying type. So if they can buy type and have it shipped to New Harmony, because remember, it's not like we're the end of the world. Ships come down, we have roads, we have other things. I mean, Robert got here by getting off a ship and coming in a carriage. And so I bet they just bought paper. But I don't know that. I haven't seen that. And on the type, I know that he complained once, we don't have enough type, and we've paid you enough money that you should give us this other 60,000 pieces of type we want. But now Thomas only spent 6 cents a day on food. He was cheap. Go ahead.
You have some of these paintings that are
Mhm.
on.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Ryan would know more, and the people here would know. Do you have any of the original? Oh, do we have an original McClure right now?
No.
Oh, I guess Ryan's the person you have to ask on that. I just don't know. Go ahead.
Well, my question is, if you are into entomology
Uh-huh.
and you're an young person,
Oh, I understand. Yeah. You have to speak up a little bit because I have an appointment the 30th with my person who's going to tell me I need hearing aids,
okay.
and I know I do.
Well, what would, like, if you're looking at career choices right now in
Yeah.
America, you know, for entomology,
Yeah.
like, where would you?
Purdue University has an amazing program.
Okay.
But IU has a program. Purdue has one that's just, they have a whole entomology department. But it's mainly because they have all the agriculture stuff. And Thomas Say named, the first times he was naming insects, he was naming things that ate crops. And he named like 40 different things that ate crops.
Well, what are your different choices of entomology?
Oh, well, okay, you've got,
jobs?
now this is me. I know several of the big Eastern schools have it. Brown has it. I know West Stanford has it, but I also know University of Colorado has it. You need a place with a school of agriculture usually.
Okay, so that.
Yeah, and it's complete. Okay, now this is me. You can go to school and here what this. I've seen lots of studies. One of them was at Harvard. They wanted to show that Harvard gave more people the best education, and that's not what it showed, so they didn't publish it. Okay, it said if you really want to be educated, it's up to you.
Yeah.
It's not up to your mom and dad. It's not up to your professors. It's only if you want to be educated, you can be. If you're there to party and play around, you can do that too. But to be educated, you have to want education. And go ahead. Anybody else? Oh well, let's go have cake. What is it Mary Antoinette said? Thank you very much, by the way.
Thank you.
And Ryan's here if you want to come up and look at their. I don't touch the originals.
So Randy, I kept thinking they eloped to Mount Vernon.
Huh?
I kept thinking they eloped.